Hey everybody, last week of October. Can you believe it? Time has gone by just so fast. Speaking about time, I just want to give a shout out to Haven Cottage Investments. Wow, who could have guessed that I was going to do a little plug? Great way to start your investment in terms of property. If you want to rent a home, if you want to buy a home, if you're looking for people to rent your home, anything and everything revolving around Haven Cottage Investments, definitely need to give them a chance. All right, everything you need to know to get in contact with them, all in the description down below. All right, property is important, all right, especially the young people out there, or even the middle old people out there, or even the old people out there. You're 112. Well, it's never too late to get into the property game. Anyways, mention the podcast and you will get half off the commission rate. That is, again, Haven Cottage Investments. Please check them out. And now back to your regular channeled programming. One more podcast.
Good for the podcast.
That would have been really good. It's okay. For those of us just tuning in, we just had a 3-hour long conversation about how the socioeconomic structure of our middle class has been in decline ever since the 2008 recession, leading into a wide variety of topics ranging both in the technology sector along with... No, I'm just kidding. We were just like talking about people and gossiping. Anyways, with blah 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 intro. Welcome back to the One More Podcast. I'm here with...
Hi, it's me, Charis.
It's me, Charis. Anyways, so back to what you were saying. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry, I had to do...
No, it's okay.
Intros.
I liked it. I'm really sad they missed this first part. So, to give y'all a little background of what happened is tonight, Yuval and I went to megachurch.
Yeah. Well, okay. Clarification, it wasn't an actual well, I guess technically it was a service in a sense. I was calling it a service thingy. It was what is it?
It's a young adult gathering.
There you go, young adult.
There's some
Is
singing.
It like Youth Life or whatever? Young Life? Is that
No, Young Life's different.
Oh, what's Young Life? Real quick,
Young
I'm sorry.
Life.
We're tangenting off of what's Young Life.
Young Life is a mentorship discipleship program. So basically, if one person is a Christian and they're well versed in the Bible and the Spirit, and they go to someone younger than them and they attempt to disciple them and relationally connect with them in their life and just get to know them, and in turn hopefully be able to share things that they have learned about God, the Bible, the Spirit, to this person, but through relationship. It goes relationship first. It's strategic. So relationship first, get to know them. Don't try and tell them things in just like classroom setting, but like take them to a Starbucks, take them to a Stars game, hang out with them, get to know their life, know their parent, know what their dog's name is, and don't just tell them how to live their life, walk their life with them. So that's what Young Life is.
Oh, okay. And is that the age range is like once you're 18, you can't be in Young Life, or?
It generally is aimed... Young Life, generally once you're over 18, you're a mentor.
Oh, okay.
If you're under 18, you're generally someone being menteed.
Got you.
So it just is a strategic way to help youth understand the knowledge of God through relationship.
Okay. All right.
So through positive interaction.
Sure. That makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. So going back, I blew your mind. I totally blew your expectations of your perception.
He did, y'all. This Yuval, I tell you, he's a one of a kind.
There's probably like a good handful of people named Yuval. So
yeah. Actually, I met your mom, and now I'm really self-conscious about all of the things that I say on this podcast.
Oh, because she's actively listening, and
because she's actively listening. I was like, I'm sorry, I threatened your son on the last one. Yeah, if you're listening to this one, really.
I mean, she legitimately she's like, all right, here's a list of things that you said that I didn't like. Here are things that you said that I do like. Maybe you can say things this way. You know what? When you're talking about really serious subjects, don't make jokes, Yuval. Please don't make jokes. It makes you sound like a bad person and stuff like that. So, yeah. But I mean, it's all out of love. So.
It is.
But anyway, yeah. So we went to, they call it the Porch, right?
The Porch,
and
yes.
It's Watermark is the place?
Yes.
Watermark. So
Watermark and the Porch.
Yes. And we went there and they wrapped up the what is it? Before Love? Or no,
First Comes Love.
First Comes Love.
The dating series. Because, newsflash, spoiler, in case you read the book, nobody dates in the Bible. And yet 90% of Americans date in some way, shape, or form.
Wait, do you really? Nobody dates in the Bible?
Nobody dates in the Bible.
So it's just
was not a concept. That's why they spend so much time on it, is because they're like, we talk to people, what do people want to know about? They want to know about relationship. Most people, like, the Porch is a singles ministry. It's for single people, working class, like early 20s up to early 30s is generally the age range of people in there. You'd say, you looked around. And most of them are unmarried and would like to be married at some point, or are considering getting married at some point.
Right.
And so, of course, they're not going to just look at this audience and be like, hey, half y'all are here to meet somebody. Let's pretend it's not happening. Let's actually address it and talk to you about it.
Yeah.
Because we see that this is something that y'all want, something that you're looking at doing at this stage in your life. Most people, if they are going to get married, most of them do get married in this time era that most of you are in. You have friends that are getting married and having babies, and
Yeah.
So let's talk about it.
So what's the problem? What's wrong with you? What's the problem?
Me?
Oh no, like, sorry, rhetorically saying what are the misconceptions? Because I know last time they were talking about there was a big emphasis on like 50%, or I don't know what the specific number is, but a large percentage of marriages do end in divorce, and what are the reasons and what are the causes and how can you prevent it and stuff like that.
Oh, for sure. And I think they kind of take that same approach as we took like with like the sexual revolution. Like, nobody talks about sex, and now we have all of these teen pregnancies that are rising and rising and rising. And we think that part of the reason that that's happening, like, is because people are just not talking about it and they're just doing. And so it's kind of that same concept of like, if we want to do good for the people that we serve as a church, why would we just, as we see what is happening to culture, where 51% of people who get married end up divorced, why would we just not talk about it and act like it's not happening?
Sure.
So let's talk about like what some of those things are causes. And surely it's not completely an antidote, but if we can start people off in the right direction, don't we have a responsibility to do so?
Yeah, I would agree with that. So, unfortunately, I have only been at the last couple of sessions, and I guess you could really only call it 1.5, I guess, technically. Tonight wasn't necessarily a lecture / lesson. It was kind of a recap, sort of. Or actually, how would you feel the ending? How do they encapsulate the entire series?
I admit I was dying at the end of that. It was just I was shocked because it was something different. Like, I've been going there for a year, so I've been through 2 different dating series, I guess. So you might be like, oh, they do dating all the time. Yeah, they do, because it doesn't matter if it's winter or spring. People, they still want to date. And
sure.
You constantly have new people filtering through. So it's kind of like taking the same material. And not only that, but like trends change in the way that people date. And so they kind of just stay current and say like, okay, here's what's happening. Here's how we're responding. But anyway, tonight, to give y'all a little context, they essentially put up on stage a guy and a girl that nobody knew. And they gave him a script and they said, hey, let's look at a relationship. Let's look at some things that culture says are okay way to talk to people, or even more relevant, some ways that we might think are the right Christian, quote unquote, ways to date, and what we actually are promoting. And a couple of the big themes tonight were passivity, respect for family, and gender roles and God's design. And I'd say the last one would be really an emphasis on the journey. Like, dating is an end. Like, dating is a means to an end. Sure. From start to finish. Yeah. Would you say those are the themes you picked up tonight? Do you agree with that synopsis?
I would, for the most part. I guess I was just trying to, since I was trying to absorb all of it at once, and since I hadn't been through the other, because when the pastor was mentioning what they previously talked about and stuff like that, I didn't necessarily pick up immediately the family values and stuff like that, because but I mean, you mention it, and there was an emphasis on making sure to talk to the father, and get praise and approval from family, because that's important. And if you're going to start a family, obviously the respecting families will be part of that. So I definitely, thinking about it now, I do agree with that. I think you're right about the passivity. Just how you can be confident and assert your beliefs, but don't be over. I forget the specific quote he said, or not quote, but I forget what he specifically said. He says something about like being assertive, or being assertive, but like don't be overbearing, or something like that. I forget specifically what he said, but
was it assertive, not aggressive?
I think so. Yeah, or yeah. Let's go with that.
Something to that nature.
Let's
the
go
idea
with
that you could be direct
without
squashing somebody else in
right,
the process.
Exactly. And just like not just dropping, 1,000-ton, weight of essentially putting all of your desires and passions and your dreams and your thoughts and everything. Just don't unload that immediately, or even don't unload it all at once. So, I would agree with that. One of my critiques, and I mean, this is just kind of me being very nitpicky. Ugh, can't talk. I get the message that they were going for. I just think it was kind of a little less unprepared, or more on the unprepared side. I get like, oh, he's a volunteer from the crowd, and then at the very end, you're like, oh, these people actually know.
I died.
Yeah.
I absolutely died. He kissed her, and I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
that's so mortifying.
I was just like, what is happening? This is a random person, and then he's like, they've been married, and it's like, okay.
I didn't know, and I'm gonna. You literally felt the entire crowd shudder, because she was like pulling away so hard.
Yep.
I felt better when he said they were married, but I was like, I was so empathetic. I was like, he doesn't even know her. Stop touching her.
he was being assertive.
Yeah, he just so y'all know, they basically led us to believe the entire time, and did a really nice job acting like
true.
They were just two people from the crowd that had to be there and do this demonstration. And at the end, he does like the fake proposal, and then he pulls her into a kiss, to which on stage we all were like, this is forced assault. What are you teaching us?
Forced assault. Yeah.
Like, isn't this, somebody help her? Yeah. Domestic violence.
But then he's like, they threw up a wedding photo and they were married in real life, which it's okay.
Yeah.
But like I said, I think, and again, I don't know how much time they spent in preparing this, and obviously the stage crew were very quick on trying to swap out all the props and swap the stage and stuff like that. But I think there was a lot more laughing than could have been. I mean, the original, is his name JP? The pastor, the guy who played the dad.
Yeah,
he's JP.
His name's JP.
He was funny, and I think he was kind of meant to be this kind of comic relief character. But I think it was a little more funny and goofy than to be able to correctly encapsulate everything. I mean, I'm sure if you're really paying attention and you weren't just like on your phone or talking with your friends or whatever, I'm sure you definitely could get a message out of that, and you could say, wow, this is a good closer. But I don't know, I guess, and again, that's just me being nitpicky about, oh, it could have been better.
I actually really appreciate that feedback from like my standpoint as a storyteller. Going outside of that, I think that you're right. If everyone is comic relief, it's not relief, it's just comedy.
Exactly.
And I think when they're hitting up such a heavy series, and then to go so funny, and it was funny, and I think part of the laughter was more just the uncomfortableness of it all going around, and it didn't give it that serious vibe that I think the other ones had. So it was a stark contrast to the way the other messages had been. And I wonder, I'm going to ask this as a question, but it's going to come out more like a statement.
Go ahead, do it. Drop the statement question.
Statement question. So comments on it. Say true, false,
Boom.
correct, incorrect.
Let's do it.
I think perhaps it made it seem slightly intangible because of the ridiculousness of it. Because it was so funny. Like everything was so lighthearted and goofy. Mm-hmm. It was almost like, yeah, but you'd never do that. Because it was too goofy. There wasn't enough to stand on that serious note.
That's true. I agree. I think they could have because I noticed the guy was doing this as he was narrating this relationship. There were a few times where he was just like, "Oh, well, you don't want to say that," or this person delivered it with not a lot of passion, but when you do that, find that passion. And I was like, okay, all right, and how would you say that? But I think he was definitely trying to put that on ourselves and saying, okay, we've shown you what not to do. We've shown you the pathway of how to do it, but that was it. We just pointed you in the direction. And again, I don't know what how involved it is, because and I would say with the last lecture, that was more definitive. He was giving very, very, and this is just, again, me being like, okay, I've heard so many speeches in the past before, and I've heard so many people, deliver these very powerful words and deliver this message that was just, it's struck right into your heart. And following that up, when I hear the opposite speeches and I hear here I'm going to talk and I'm going to say a lot of things, it makes sense, but it's not going to hit home. And I think the key for that to hit home is for specific examples. Whenever at the very beginning, the one thing that really spoke out to me last week was bringing your baggage and being very open, and I forget the specific line that he said, but essentially, when starting a relationship, you don't want to hide your baggage. You don't want to feel as though you're forced to hide it and stuff like that. And so, and he gave very, very specific examples. He gave, specific addictions. I'm not necessarily going to go into it there, but he gave specific examples of addictions that people will suffer. He gave specific personality traits, and he gave specific kind of, not necessarily archetypes that people would play in a relationship, but it was something that I can say, oh, I see this in a real life. Fast forward to this week, and agree, disagree, correct me, tell me I'm stupid, but I think it was definitely more of a kind of surface level, hey, here's how it should work, but we're not going to give you that specific example. He kind of...
Yeah, without giving the real story.
Right.
My wheels are turning here.
No, you're good. Yeah,
as a creator,
I'm just throwing everything at you and respond. Why don't you respond to me?
No, not even. I think it's that level of like that challenge of what can we do? What can be done better next time? Mm-hmm. My mind is actually, because I think that was a great idea. Mm-hmm. Like, I really do. I thought the skit thing mm-hmm. and the special effects was the best part of it. Like, the way they did all those scene changes, mm-hmm. and that was so great.
Yeah,
and
I do
it
agree.
was fun. And I think where you're saying, like, I think they have a great tool and a great opportunity. And I almost wish, like, someone were going to listen to this podcast from there, because why not? Mm-hmm. Build one with specific stories. Like, I think the realest part where they told the story of the actual couple that was up there afterwards, mm-hmm. had they sped up the story of the what ifs and this is how, like, that unrealistic dating relationship, mm-hmm. had they sped that up slightly and then expanded their exact story a little bit more mm-hmm. with some of the specifics from there, I think that could have been dynamite.
Yeah.
Really could have hit that nice, that chord between the funny and mm-hmm. the serious, and the kind of mesh together, like, this is how it's done, even if it's imperfect.
Right. Kind of learn by example.
Yeah. So look forward to next time, guys, because it's coming,
That's true.
If they hear this, it's
That's
coming,
true.
because that would be amazing to see. I think that could be a really amazing, just that production level value. Mm-hmm. That could be an amazing thing to see. That's
true. And so do they normally do kind of, and I say normally, but I'm very much in the mindset that generally it's the pastor is talking to the group. Sure, there are some rhetorical questions that he brings forward, and sure, he tries to get a little bit of active participation. But in terms of that, like, skit/play, because, like, I mean, and while the band was playing at the beginning, I was glancing every now and then at the audio guy, and, like, he was just, there's a huge soundboard, there's very high production, very high value going into all of this, and so do they utilize that at all? Like, because do they do skits/plays/ that type of storytelling, or is it mostly they use it for the music and then transitions into the solo narrative? Or do you remember?
As far as I've been there and attended, I think they utilize it to an extent. I think they could utilize it more.
Okay.
I think they have some amazing talent within that church. Like, I've showed you the Instagram page and, you know, some of that video they have at the very beginning. Do you remember we came in and they showed like the promo video and stuff?
Yeah.
And they've made stuff like that to kind of aid the message. And they have such an incredible array of artists and people that like just attend the church and serve there in that capacity. Actually, I'm going to be on the tech team coming up here soon.
Really?
Yeah. So I'll use some of my media skills.
There you go.
As a media major in college. So
sure, of course.
Yeah. I don't know. Like in comparison to some of these people, it just feels so small, but I'm excited. I'm excited to be a part because perhaps even where you're saying like, I'd love to see more of it. I come from, sorry, tangent, but I come from a very
You're good.
A church that really celebrated the arts. In the Old Testament, we kind of have David as like the ultimate artist. You know, he sang to the Lord, he worshiped, he skipped, he danced. And the church that I grew up in, often we did have skits all the time. The church I grew up in, there were skits on stage all the time, always videos. Like even before videos were hip to like be put on things that were like homemade, they were like putting videos on every week. The announcements were video. And I think by the time I was like 3rd or 4th grade, so this was early 2000s, we were already having videos in church of like skits to in-house production. So my church was really one of the front runners in that. And my parents attend a church now called Willow Creek. It's very famous in Chicago because when the contemporary movement started in the late 70s, early 80s, and people were kind of moving out of hymns into more contemporary worship where you see the bands on stage. Sorry, and I promise I'll wrap this up.
No, keep going. It's all good. No, this is good.
They kind of said like, hey, because there was a lot of naysayers to, it's hymns or nothing. That's not really sovereign. That doesn't really reflect God or this or that. And there was kind of this backlash and this revival of as people read the Bible and became more knowledgeable and looked at the Old Testament, New Testament, and it kind of says like, they were like, no, actually, not so at all. God kind of supports like our creativity. Like we're made in the image of the maker and therefore we create. We were made to create. And so we should use these different gifts and talents and, you know, blooming ideas of America, individualism to really celebrate and use that for the glory of God. So people can see like, hey, this is an excellent production. And it's not just an excellent production, but it's an excellent production that points back to the maker of all things. And, so when you say like, I would like to see more of that, I think that's a great constructive criticism in our church of it would be, and I've seen them do some really great things like those videos in the beginning. They made those videos and the Molly thing that they had, we went to.
Yeah. That was
and
really cool.
they've done like question and answer where they bring people in and they do different visuals on stage that are really powerful.
Okay.
But
well, real quick, I don't mean to interrupt you, but so to bring it back, to tie it all back to what you originally said. So what would be some examples that you would want them to do or something like that? Or do you have any off the top of your head that you think that would really increase engagement and, you know, have more people involved and less people look at their phones and more constantly actively looking at the stage?
I think one thing that they do that they could take further would be the social media at the beginning. Oh,
really? You don't think that's it? Because I think that's when I first went and they were like, hey, you know, thanks for tweeting us out, blah, blah, blah. And they showed a picture and they had a little spiel about that. I thought that was like, wow, that's really like, that's 21st century right there. Like,
I loved that. No, what I'm saying, like, I think that's really cool. I think it would be even cooler if they took it a step further.
Oh, okay.
If they did like little, I don't want to necessarily like, I don't know. I think it could get dangerous if you glorify your members of your church too much.
Okay.
Like not necessarily this or that, but if they had like a section that was like real people, like if they did like short little testimonies, like how they did like with the couple at the end, and they said, hey,
oh, okay,
this was her story, and you know, giving her personal story of like the broccoli. And making it like a real person, you know, and taking it back to like, this is just somebody that's here. And reminding you that, hey, like this somebody that's here is just like your roommate that you live with at home. This is just, you know,
and
everybody's not like shallow knee deep. You know, I think it would kind of get rid of that feel of like where, we just shook hands and now we're all just going to sit around each other.
So you're not going to throw that back at me?
No, I was saying, I think that's a valid criticism. And I think that any criticism is an opportunity for improvement.
Okay.
And if you see an actual or have an idea to actually improve, why not try it?
That's true. No, I agree.
Does it mean that I think it'll work? I mean, yeah, that's why I threw out the ideas, because I would hope it would work, but it could backfire. And like I said, it could go to glorifying certain members that got like mentioned or tearing them down kind of, or, just exposing them.
Well, I definitely think that, for the most part, the general mood, tone, and especially I think this is very difficult when you have such large numbers, because it can be so polarizing. I think genuinely they're all happy and positive. Okay, I won't say happy, positive and accepting. I feel like that is very much sure, you're going to have a few batches of people here and there that are just really mean people and they're just grr and, whatever. But for the most part,
the ones that thought they were going to the restaurant.
Yeah, thought they were going to the restaurant. They're like, what is this place? What are we doing here?
I'll tell you about that later, but
but yeah, so I think and it was interesting how when the band was playing at the very beginning, it was a huge crowd participation. Everybody was singing along, everybody was into it, people were raising their hands, and they were in the moment. They were very living in the moment, and they felt kind of interconnected with everyone, and it was very, and I think just looking at just the sheer volume of how many people are participating and being positive and being acceptance, that's crazy in a good way. I think it's very much not necessarily overwhelming, but the music starts playing and the guy starts singing and everyone's singing along. You're just kind of like thinking to yourself, wow, this is, because it's hard, because when you're in your social group, I don't know about you specifically. Well, okay, I kind of know about you, but I'm gonna say I don't. I'm gonna say I don't know about you. But I hang around, maybe max 5 people. If I've ever been in a social setting, never been more than 4 or 5 people. And it's definitely hard when you have these, and again, I say taboo, but very, very loosely, these taboo subjects like religion or politics. And, it's not something, unless you're actively in debate or you're actively a concerned constituent talking to your representative, or you're active in your church or whatever it is. Outside of that, it's very hard to solidify how impactful and how powerful and how true the meaning can be, because you're such a small group. And so, and I'll be honest, in my group, we've never really talked about religion. I was never been something that, hey, let's have a conversation about God. Hey, let's have a conversation about the afterlife. That's rarely, if ever, was ever talked about. And so, when you go to a place like this, and it's not just a close, very intimate setting, and you have this huge, like I said, just this overwhelming amount of people that we're here to talk about God. We're here to talk about this. This is something. It's astounding to me. I don't necessarily remember the reason of my rambling here, but and I guess to pull it to a point about that, what I was saying before, the shallow, quote unquote shallow idea, it definitely dispelled a lot of my preconceived notions about that. Even with such a huge number of people, it still was like probably more powerful than a close, intimate setting. So
yeah, and actually they really encourage. You don't even, have we talked about this? It's called Watermark Community Church. And they said, like, community group. Maybe they threw that out a couple times. You heard that? Okay,
sure. Let's pretend I did.
Okay, well, or CG for short.
Okay.
They really encourage, so you have big group meeting every week, but they also encourage meeting with a small group of 4 to 10 people.
Okay.
Your same age, guided by, like, a leader, to kind of not just have Bible study, but to have community to live life with. So whether you like these people or not, you meet on a weekly basis and you guys talk about the God and talk about the Lord, and you know, your backgrounds don't always line up. You didn't necessarily pick these people to be yourself. You kind of just get like put in group with them, and the only thing you really have is like, we're all going to follow Jesus, and devote daily and kind of follow these constituents.
I do remember, now that you mentioned that smaller group setting, I don't know, I think it's interesting where you have to get back to and I do want to talk about kind of that small group setting, but okay, real quick, have you ever been to kind of a small intimate type thing, or have you always done the mega churches?
No, I've been part of small
okay
things.
And real quick then, what would you say is your comparison between the two, the benefits versus or maybe there are no benefits, or maybe there are negatives, or whatever it is?
I love having both in harmony at the same time, because you already basically, it was so interesting for me to hear you, especially like you as like a Jewish man, or like identifying that way, to
a young
you're
Jewish
just,
child
whatever,
trying to reach out to how did it go?
Going to get your bride.
There you go. Sorry, go ahead.
But you're saying like that astounding presence of so many people looking at the same thing. That's 100% the same thing I love about being in that big. Well, that is what I love about being in the big setting, is because it's not just like all walks of life. Because here's the other thing: it really strengthens my faith, because it's like if all these people believe, and we're all listening to the same thing, the same book, and you've got ranges of people around you. You've got, you know, artisans, construction workers. The guy on the other side of us, Ryan, he's a doctor with his own practice. Incredibly accomplished guy.
Wait, the guy that was sitting next to you?
Yep.
Wow. Wow. Okay. How old is he?
Early 30s.
Wow. I thought
Maybe
he was a lot
mid-30s?
younger. Wow. Okay. Wow. That's awesome. That's
So,
amazing.
You know, just incredibly like PhDs.
Yeah.
Like incredibly like worldly educated people from all over. Like there are girls in my community formation. So like that's pre-community group. My smaller, I'm part of a couple different like smaller groups inside this big group, from like France and from, you know, Haiti and from all over. So you get kind of a worldly, it gathers so many people, and yet somehow we're all bound by the same thread. And like you said, we all partake in that same moment. So I think that really solidifies my fact, like, A, I'm not crazy. I'm not going at this alone at all.
Sure.
So you're part of something bigger than yourself, and it reminds you of that. And B, but the fact that you kind of saw that as like an outsider, as someone who doesn't, well, from what I understood, doesn't normally do that kind of thing, and said, this is really cool. This is really cool to see this. And like, we both appreciate that same kind of element of that just sheer power of numbers. Yeah. I think.
Well, so sorry.
It's okay.
I'm always interrupting you. You say you're part of you say, as if you're lying. I don't know. You theoretically.
Oh, you got me.
you state on the record that you're part of this big group, but then you go ahead and state that you're part of smaller groups. No, but like,
yeah.
Don't you feel that you'd be spreading yourself too thin for that? Because I get, and again, don't take this the wrong way, but I think that there is a cap to how much you can put in, because you know you have your work, you have the 8 to 5, that's work. You have to devote some time to family, you devote some time to friends, you devote some time to your religion, you devote some time to yourself, blah 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 blah. But wouldn't it be better to really focus in on, I'm here for the big group, or do the big group less but really focus in on this one group? So I'm just curious how you're able to manage, if you are, I don't know if you were just exaggerating or whatever, but if you really are in these small groups, like how you can be so 100%, or do you give 100%? I don't know. I'm not trying to make you sound like a bad person. I'm just genuinely curious.
Of course not. Actually, it's kind of amazing. So you say you're 8 to 5. You know my 7 to 8.
Yes. Yeah. That's true.
For y'all that don't know, 5 days a week I work 7 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Except on
she
Tuesday.
Works 3 jobs.
Except on Tuesdays, I go to the Porch. I leave at 6:15 and I go be part of big group. And then on Sunday, I am part of big group again.
Okay.
I'm also part of small group. And it's limited. I mean, the small group, they only require 2 hours of you a week.
Oh, okay.
And the big group is 2 hours? So that's
Sure.
4 hours total a week.
Oh, okay.
And then I serve, so that's like another hour, but that's only like once every other week.
Okay.
So, I mean, some weeks you end up putting in like 5 hours total. But I mean, if it's about, honestly, here's the thing is like, I want to be there. My value is to be there. So
right.
I kind of I'll do what it takes to get there. True. And the other thing is I didn't always do it. Mm-hmm. My life was a little bit more hectic prior to this.
Right, on the run from cops and, shooting up
all that
heroin and stuff. Yeah.
But I think it's the most important thing about me, to be honest, is to be in community with believers and to get as much knowledge as I can so that I can be as equipped as I can, because the idea is that St. Francis says, preach the gospel at all times, use words if necessary. Mm-hmm. The idea is if you know it in your heart, you don't have to tell it with your mouth. Your life will reflect it. And I hope that if I die or if I,
I don't want you to die. Don't die.
Well, if I die or, if I interact with people, I want them to know I want them to know this is what I did and perhaps maybe get curious about it so they would find out for themselves so they could find as much satisfaction as I did. I mean, that's really my hope is I think there's no greater good than God, and my relationship with God is the most important thing about me. So I hope that if anybody sees that or recognizes that and it's not the most important thing in their life, that they might...
You can nudge them in the right direction.
They might wonder about it. Ultimately, I just want everyone to have good. I want everyone to have God, so...
No, I very much agree with that. I think that's the... And I mean, you can even boil it down to just generic things in life where, if you're passionate about this and this makes you happy, it gives you a purpose, you find a reason, it's there for you when you're down, it's there for you when you're up, why wouldn't you not want to share that? Right?
Exactly.
And so it would be almost like going against your nature to say, no, you can't. Keep this to yourself. Don't talk about this with anybody.
Well, yeah. And if you are a person of my conviction, step in my shoes for a second, where I think this defines
I don't think my feet would fit, but go ahead.
Okay. If this defines your eternity, what have you got to lose? If you know where you're going, what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is, how much do you have to hate the people around you that you would keep it from them?
That's true. I mean, that's an interesting concept. No, I do agree. So moving kind of a little bit forward with, because you mentioned, it's something, 5 hours, sometimes, 5 hours a week or whatever, that's nothing for you. That's because you want to be there, you're learning, you're growing, you're all of that. Do you do anything outside? I mean, I know you said we had a conversation earlier about, taking time whenever you're driving in your car to kind of have that relationship and have that, oh, sorry, was that private or you're not?
No, no, I'm just smiling because you remembered.
Oh, well, sure.
It was just a small thing.
No, yeah. I have the memory of an elephant, people say sometimes.
Oh, wow.
But anyways, so, there are small things like that. And I can kind of parallel off of that. And there are some things where, I'll take time to sort of just, hey, let's sit down, because life moves so fast. And
it does.
If you're not going to make time for anything, then you'll never find time. You actively have to, you won't find it. You have to make it. So, is there anything outside, of the, religion and the we'll call it the quote unquote establishment, outside of that you take it upon yourself, or do you have that, do you carry around a Bible 24/7 in your back pocket? Like, I don't know. Some people do.
I carry it on my phone, which goes in my back pocket.
That's true.
Most of the time. So yeah.
Okay.
No, I don't want to make myself. Here's the thing. I don't want to incriminate myself, because here's the thing. I am a terrible person. I know that. Like, sure. I'm awful. So if I come off like people will hear this podcast and they're like, oh wow, she's really religious, but I know she did this bad thing, like, because I do bad things. Ooh, shocker. I'm human.
Right.
Like, I sin. I'm horrible. And I am trying my absolute, like, everything I've got to give it to this thing in my life, because ultimately, like, that's what this life is for, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But I screw it up, and I like, whatever. So I just want to put that out there first. Like,
Okay.
I know that I'm not perfect.
Sure.
I don't think I'm perfect. But like, I just, I think you get like, because it's making it sound like I spend like a whole ton of time doing this, and it's not, because for me, it's not sectioned out like this. I'm not a pancake. I'm not like, oh, these are my little, or a waffle. I'm not a waffle. These are my little squares for religion in my week.
Right.
I'm like a pancake. It's like, my religion is the syrup. It just,
Sure. It just all works together.
it just morphs into everything that I do.
Right.
Or at least I want it to.
Mm-hmm.
I have those.
You have the intention for it, and I think really that's all that matters, is as long as you're taking the active steps. But I'm sorry for interrupting. Go ahead. Continue.
So yeah, my parents always prayed with me every night before bed.
Okay.
To really teach me how to talk to God and to listen to God.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to make a point of talking to God, even if it's not like, oh, like outside of the this is my time to talk to God. Like, just, things happen, or I observe things, just like straight up, acknowledging God's presence. If you believe in omnipotence, like just acknowledging, hey, God, I saw you do that. That was cool. Like, or, hey, I really love this sunset. Thanks for making it. Or, friendship is really awesome. Like, I feel just so loved right now. Thanks for making that a thing in this world. Or,
okay.
Just acknowledging his presence in my daily life.
No.
Or I just got pulled over. God, what are you doing right now? Where are you? Why did that cop's camera not jam?
Sure. No, I understand that. I guess, and I appreciate the insight to that. I guess I might have not worded it super exactly how I was thinking about it in terms of that extra outside. I guess realistically, thank you for answering my question, as it was so poorly worded. I guess really what I was trying to say was, in terms of what you learned from the quote unquote establishment, how much of that do you take on faith, and then how much of that, and I use the word faith interchangeably, but how much you take that and you just say, I accept that to be true, versus how much you go outside of it to say, okay, well, was he saying really, did that make sense? Let's do some research. Let's think about it. Because I know there's a lot of people who will just blindly regurgitate what they hear at church.
Oh.
And I've been in the back end of that. So sorry. And I do like what you were saying before for my first question, but to kind of focus in on that one.
For sure. Definitely, within the church, there's always factions and sects and splits, have you, of people that really believe differently or interpret things differently than the way that their leaders or elders say them. And that's why the church is constantly changing. That's why it even went from like Protestant Reformation, versus Catholic. That's why we have those two major big differences. And one thing, and you'll hear me talk about this constantly, is my interpretation. And I have been so humbled by the way my mind has been changed, where I thought I understood something and interpreted it. And then I've done more research or prayed about it, and just really my mind has been changed.
Okay.
For example, one of those would be, I seem to be a pretty traditional person as far as like male and female roles. But growing up, I grew up in New York, and I'm about to say something real controversial.
Do it. Drop it. Boom. Or bombs here.
I used to be very condoning of same-sex relationships. Celebrated them.
The door. I'm just kidding. I'm totally playing. It's all right.
No, but I used to be very like just accepting, like very like even celebratory. Like, yay! Like, I'm glad that you guys found each other. Like, just really did not care.
Right.
Wasn't my life choice, but even in the church, like, we should marry people that are the same sex. Like, I really strongly, passionately felt like God was saying, like, you just need to be monogamous, and that's the real message in the Bible here. And,
right.
just love people. And if we're really loving our brothers and sisters in Christ, like, we shouldn't let their sexual preferences divide us. So,
Wait, hold on. I'm sorry. I guess I'm a poor listener. I thought you said before you condone that, or you never condone that, or you didn't condone that.
Oh,
You
when I
used
was,
the word condone, so why?
I permitted it. I thought it was good.
Oh, okay.
Wait,
so then why is that controversial?
a lot of people in the church
Okay.
do
Controversial
not
in the church.
believe that
Gotcha.
you should have same-sex relationships. I no longer really believe that's the best way to live.
Sure.
And I no longer really necessarily I would be supportive in a different way that I was once supportive.
Okay.
I definitely no longer really think that is the design that God had in mind.
Okay.
That we just, I really definitely, and please understand, I love my friends.
Sure.
Especially even my friends that have same-sex attraction or in same-sex relationships. But I do believe that it is wrong. Where
Okay.
I once thought that there was no harm in it,
Sure.
I now feel convicted to a point where I'm like, that really doesn't line up with what Scripture says, and that really doesn't,
Okay.
match
Okay.
the way that I believe that this is meant to be interpreted.
Sure.
But there are still people that believe like I did before, and I don't think that, I've matured past that, or that means that I think that I have it right necessarily. Like, of course I think I have it right. That's why I think it now.
Okay.
But does that mean that I'm going to fight somebody over it? No.
Okay.
Like, I'm not going to, maybe, it gets a little tricky. It does, because you
It
constantly,
sounds very tricky.
you constantly come into contact with people in all different walks of their faith, with all different backgrounds. And especially when you meet someone who's kind of a new believer, but also, and you're saying, I don't think this is a good way to live. And they start to reform their life, and they want to reform, maybe they don't want to, I don't know, like they want to stop whatever it is they're doing. They want to, they want to reform and start living, the way they think is right, and what they see as fit and pure and,
Sure.
upright and holy. And so you kind of start to get towards that one, and they go, okay, well, I'll, stop having sex with my same-sex partner, but because we're not married. But then it begs the question of, but can we get married?
Okay.
And like, you're like,
Right. And so just, I mean, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but
Sure.
I'm assuming through growth and through your own personal maturity and your experiences and stuff like that, this was kind of a gradual shift for you, or was it just one night you're just like, you know what, boom, I think the other way? Or because, and again, I mean, I'm not trying to put you on the pedestal and say why, but I'm just, because I'm
why
curious.
not ask?
Well,
like,
no,
it's
I mean,
fine. And the other thing is, like, for me, it's definitely hard to stand by what you believe, especially in those contexts, because it goes so against culture.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for me to say that, like, that's really, you even hear me like backpedaling, like, look,
Yeah.
I love y'all,
Right.
but I think that what you're doing is hurtful to
Okay.
yourselves. And I think that was ultimately what is, especially in my younger days, I didn't see how it could hurt people.
Okay.
And where you say, like, it happened gradually, the older I got, the more I read, I kind of saw the design play out.
Okay.
And I saw resulting pain. And I saw things that hurt as a result. And so I wouldn't say it was all straight, like, I read this, read that, read this. It was like I was reading, and while I was reading, I was seeing, and I was experiencing. And I think, like, it's to remember that the Lord doesn't only speak through, like, text. He also speaks through, like, the experiences that we have. And certain things I think we witness or go through because he kind of is leading us in a direction he wants us to go, or a way he wants us to think.
Okay.
And does that mean that I narrow him down and this is the way that he will always have me see it? No, absolutely
Sure.
not, because I think
Sure.
I was led to see it a different way for a different time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was led this way. And so does that mean, and that just comes back to, like, that whole point of I only know how much I don't know.
That's true. Going off that point real quick, we have some really close family friends, and it was really interesting. And here, we're gonna pause the podcast just for 1 second so I can show you this live demonstration. All right, and we're back. I just reached over a thing and struggled and made some really disgusting noises. Okay, so
He didn't make any noises.
I made very gross noises. It was like woke up the whole neighborhood. Dogs are barking. Police sirens are going off. The neighbor is...
This is a podcast, Yuval. They can hear.
Oh, this is true. Sorry. I don't know. All right, well, the lights are flickering on and off, and, never mind. Okay, so going off of what you said... You know what you don't know, right? What? Say it again. What did you say?
I only know that I only know how much I don't know.
Exactly. Okay. So, think of this paper. I have a piece of paper out in front of us. Okay. So think of this paper as all of the knowledge in the entire world. And forgive me, Mike, if you're listening to this and I'm totally butchering what it is, but this is my interpretation of what you said. So this paper is all of the knowledge in the world. Everything. Life, universe, God, no God, whatever it is, literally the vastness of everything. Okay. And as you as a person, you know this much. Okay. This is what you know. This is what you understand. This is what you hold true. This is what you have faith in. Okay. Now you can read, you can go to school, you can get a higher education, you can go through religion, you can go and be experienced in that way, and you can really delve into all of that. Okay. Well, that increases your knowledge this much. Okay. Well, sure, you know more, but this circumference of the circle is a lot bigger than what before. So now you have all these questions where you don't know, all these new information, what you're learning, what you're growing from. Sure, you had this very skewed perception, and it was very small in comparison, and you only had a few questions. And some people are satisfied with that. Some people say, you know what, I know 20%, and I'm okay with that. And 20% only gives me 5% of questions. Well, because, you go to church, because you go to synagogue, because you go to college, because you get your PhD, because you do all of this and you increase your knowledge, well, that's awesome. You know more, you're more holistic, but that comes with more of what I don't know. So now you know 30%, but now you have like 15% more questions. And so it's kind of interesting, in this vastness of this page. I mean, that's us. I mean, sure, it's relative and sure, it's comparison, but this tiny circle, this, circumference, that's us.
Yeah, and what's really funny about this representation is, like, you see the tiny circle where you don't know much? It's because you're only touching about this much of the outside, and when your circle gets bigger, you touch this much of the outside.
Exactly. The circumference gets bigger, and what you don't know gets bigger. And I think, and unfortunately, fortunately/unfortunately, that's kind of the dilemma that we face is, sure, you can live a very closeted life, and sure, you can live where I know myself, I know my family, I know my friends, I know God, that's it. Boom, done, I'm finished. And, if you can be happy and you can be satisfied and you can just go on through life, float on the river, the lazy river of life, that's fine. That's totally okay. But if you choose to expand your knowledge, if you really choose to, challenge yourself and grow as a person, well, you're just only going to have more questions, and you're only going to ask for more. And it's up to you whether or not you're okay with that, because some people don't want more questions.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is more questions. Here's the thing is, like, it falls right under our topic of our religion. The more that I learned, the more that I studied, the more questions I had, and the more it challenged me. Mm-hmm. Because the more I came up with things, the more I was like, how can that be? Mm-hmm. Or do I really trust it? As I hold this true, and now I've learned this, and now I have this whole, what do you call it, paradigm?
Yeah.
Where I want to hold each of these things equally true, but yet they seem to be in conflict with each other.
Exactly.
You open yourself to more opportunities like that.
Opportunities, horrible catastrophes, it depends on how you perceive it. Things of
that nature.
So real quick, we're almost at an hour, and I know you said you wanted to be.
Oh yeah, what time are you letting me?
You're trapped here forever.
Shoot.
Yeah, no, I'm really sorry. So
late.
We'll close this. It's like 3 a.m. right now.
Guys,
we'll close this off, real quick. And I just get your opinion about this, since we kind of hopped onto the idea of expanding our horizons. This really was forced to read it. I believe I was forced to read it for freshman year, maybe, or sophomore year for English. And it was it was essentially an autobiography of Frederick Douglass. And there was one part where he was talking about when he was first he was first captured and he was first a slave, and he lived this whole life. Well, that's all he knew. All he knew was the life of a slave. All he knew was that there was this white guy who's told him what to do. He got fed. He worked. He slept. That was it. That was his reality. That was his life. That was his ignorance. It was only until he learned how to read, and it was only until he learned what was outside of his life, which made him depressed. What made him cry every night. What effectively ruined his life. And that kind of coincides with the statement, ignorance is bliss. Because if you only know this much, if you only know this small amount, well, sure, Bob Joe over here knows more, and he's going to look at that and say, well, you only know so little. Why is that? Well, that might be a choice. And obviously I don't think we have anything currently in this extreme situation of like slavery, but some people, all right, that's a separate entire conversation. We can have a 3-hour podcast about that one. But some people live in this reality where they might be afraid to expand. They might be afraid, or they might be worried that I don't know, I guess the stereotype may or may not hold true, but like some of the dumbest people in the world are the most happy because they have nothing to worry about. So I don't know, I was curious about your opinion about is it worth that gap? Is it worth it? Because I mean, realistically, you can go about your life and live from birth to death until your only knowledge is this much. I'm sorry, you're getting a phone call, and I'm trying to like keep you here and get your opinion about everything. Gotcha. Okay, all right, wrap it up real quick. So answer the question. Is it worth it? Boom. Sorry, I'm like trying to ramble on.
No, it's all right.
Would you think it's worth it?
I don't think you actually get a choice. I think it's only kind of a choice. I think if you choose to ignore, that's the thing, because if you know that someone else knows more and you choose to ignore it, you know more. You do know more.
True.
You're not choosing to act on it, but you are in a way. Because I think it's only human to continue to think, and if you're thinking, you're growing. So, but there are people who are not deep, I would say. They don't really care, All right. They're just kind of, but I think that is such a...
I'm totally dropping a mind bomb on you, and you're like, answer this question in 30 seconds.
Their joy is just as deep as their pain. Like their happiness is just as shallow as their knowledge. That's
actually a really insightful way to look at that. I didn't necessarily make that correlation, but or that connection, but no, I absolutely agree. I think that's very true.
I think you have the capacity for more if you open yourself up to more.
Okay.
The more you open up yourself, the more capacity you will hold.
I like that. All right. Well, I think that's a great note to end on. Sorry, I know we just totally wrapped up like the last couple of minutes there, but no, I appreciate taking the time to sit down and listen to me ramble, and you get to ramble and going back and forth. So
nah, Yuval, it was fun. Thanks so much for coming and entertaining and
of course and
opening yourself up.
That's true.
To these past couple of weeks. And
great. Does that mean my happiness is going to be deeper now, and my depression is going to be even deeper? Is that what it is?
Perhaps.
Perhaps.
But we're
right.
going to go to the synagogue, so perhaps mine will be too.
That's very true. No, you're just going to fall. Oh my gosh, you're going to listen to our rabbi, and you're going to fall into a deep depression. I'm just kidding. All right. Anyways, that is the end of the podcast. I really appreciate everyone sticking to the end. We kind of tackled something never really tackled before on the podcast, so hopefully this gets well received. If not, that's okay. I still love you. No, I secretly hate you if you don't like the video or audio. Anyways,
all right. Thanks so much, Yuval.
Any closing remarks, comments, anything?
If you're listening to this,
and that's it. If you're listening to this, no, I'm sorry. I'm totally sorry for interrupting you. Go ahead.
Thanks
That's
for
it?
listening.
Okay.
Sorry
good.
you didn't get a chance to respond and, share.
I mean, I'll tell you if this video gets any comments. Or
Oh, it'll
anything.
go viral.
Oh, I hope it doesn't.
Oh, I hope it does.
All right, everybody. Have a great day, morning, nap
Night,
time,
evening.
Yeah, work time, whenever you're listening to this.
Bye, y'all.
And that is it. All right, we are finished with the episode. Really hope you enjoyed it. Again, as I've said before, if you learned something awesome, if not, well, too bad, but try again next time. I definitely assure you to try again. What was that old saying? Try again? Something like that. Anyways, back to Haven Cottage investments. All right, people. I don't know how many times I've said it, but Haven Cottage is a great place to start for your future. All right, Sabrina Parker, she is fantastic. All right, I don't know how many times I can keep emphasizing it, but yeah, get in contact with her. All of that information is down below in the description. Again, if you mention the podcast, you get half off the commission rate. Look, if you just got questions, boom, go give her a call, give her an email, whatever it is. If you just want to have a conversation, see what you can do for your future, it's perfect, all right? You want to buy a home, rent a home, sell a home, lease a home, whatever it is, anything, yo, Haven Cottage Investments, that's the way to do it, all right? Again, all that information is down below. And, well, man, October's almost over. Well, have a great one, people, I guess, ? See you in November.
Out of paper, out of stock. There's friendly faces around the block. Break loose from the chains that are causing you pain. Call Michael and Stanley, Jim, Dwight, Creed. Call Andy and Callie for your business paper needs. Dunder Mifflin, the people versus paper people. Dunder Mifflin, the people versus paper people.
Time out. I was under the impression that this was going to be a rap.
What's rap?
Okay, Daryl, wow. You need to learn a lot about your own culture. I'll make you a mix.
Great.